Good evening to all for this wonderful gathering for the program of which is conducted by an Institution Innovation Council of Arunai Engineering College in association with Department of Computer Science Engineering. I take immense pleasure to welcome our Vice Chairman Engineer E.V. Kumaran sir, our respected Registrar Dr. R. Sathyaseelan sir, our beloved Principal and respected Principal, our Principal Dr. R. 𝐿𝐿 sir, for this wonderful gathering on this occasion. I take immense pleasure to invite the young dynamic person, Mr. Arunai Choudhury, who is a founder of Capsules Lab from Kolkata, to make a session on angel investment and as well as the venture capital funding opportunity for early stage entrepreneurs. I welcome you, sir, on Department of Computer Science and on occasion of Institution Innovation Council of Arunai Engineering College. Now I take privilege to make our principal to felicitate the gathering. Please, sir.
So, good evening to one and all present here. Good evening, Mr. Arunai Choudhury, sir. So it is a great pleasure to be a part of this this session on angel investment and VC funding opportunity. We have with us Mr. Arunai Choudhury, founder of Capsule Labs from Kolkata. So our people being technopreneurs must know what are all the financial side of the entrepreneurial opportunity. So we should know who will fund and how to attract funds, how to source funds. So that is an essential part for a growth of an organization from concept to market. So in the travel, so we need to know this. So that's why this session has been arranged. And unfortunately, my video is not working. Kindly pardon with me. So this session will be a very useful one for whoever want to pursue their dream of some idea, novel idea, make it into a marketable product or some service through internet or out of internet by product. So I wish all the students to make use of this opportunity and appreciations for the computer science and other people who have arranged this session. Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, Professor.
Thank you, sir, for your motivational speech and great support for progressively take our Institution Innovation Council to the next step. I request Professor Arunai Choudhury, who is the founder of Capsule Lab from Kolkata, to take over the session. Please, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the very, very warm welcome. Is my screen? Welcome one and all. Very, very good evening. I hope the weather is a little bit forgiving down south. It's been very hot and humid over here, and we have to go with what we have, right? I see a lot of familiar faces, a lot of familiar names in the audience today. So it's always good to have everybody back. Right? So today's talk is essentially structured around three things that I wanted to talk about, right? The first one is really about early stage entrepreneurship, right? What really differentiates, running a new company, taking something from a stage of an idea to taking it much, much deeper, right? And then I want to make this hypothesis that, building a product, building a minimum viable product needs essentially six types of resources, right? We will get into what these resources are, where to find them, and how to look at different kinds of funding sources for these kind of companies, right? So far, what I have seen from Arunai is, there's a lot of potential in the ideas that have been brought up, in the way the students and the faculty members have talked about giving shape to various problems, right? Problems that they are seeing day in and day out, right? How to bring them out as problems that not only all of you are seeing, but if it's a problem that you are seeing, then maybe others like you may be experiencing the same kind of problem, right? So it kind of gives you an insight about how to tackle these kind of challenges, right? Because if you think of something as a problem, chances are there are others like you who may also think of that as a problem, and very likely they may be willing to pay money to get rid of that problem, right? That's how new businesses are created. That's how innovation is created, right? By the way, if any of you have a particular question, right, please feel free to stop me and ask those questions, because I want the session to be interactive, right? There are no bad questions. Anytime you feel like you need a particular clarification, you can go ahead. Start with what I call as the entrepreneurial spirit, right? Often I have heard this in a number of in a number of different places, is entrepreneurship, innovation leads to entrepreneurship. You have a particular idea and then you can turn that idea around into a company, right? But in my mind, what was happening was that this picture was actually a little flipped, right? Because innovation, for most cases, innovation does not exist in isolation. It is very difficult to do innovation which is suddenly out of nothing to be able to come up with an idea, right? It takes the probabilities of that happening is very, very small, right? Rather, it is the entrepreneurship spirit where we start looking at what problems can we solve, right? Once we get into that mindset, we look at new ways to solve a particular problem, right? If we are in the hostel and we are not getting good internet connectivity, somebody thinking that how can I solve that challenge, right? How do I bring internet to the hostel, right? That leads to innovation. When we were in college, I still remember our hostel was relatively new and we did not have internet connectivity, right? But some of our students had a Government of India project where they were working on WiMAX based solutions, right? And our transit campus being a little far away, two master's students, they came together, they created a WiMAX network, and then that allowed them to piggyback internet traffic on top of that. So innovation comes out of very dire situations. Innovation comes out of as students, things that we are stuck in, problems that we get to see every day around us, right? So the act of creating new experiences or improving a process efficiency or efficacy, that is what innovation is. And entrepreneurship is really the behavioral act to connect capital to labor, right? So in my mind, this picture was flipped because I saw entrepreneurship as dictating innovation, right? Entrepreneurship meant that whenever you found an opportunity to change things around a little bit, right? It was difficult for people in a house to, in a colony, to go and pay the electric bill all by themselves. Pretty soon you'll find somebody coming up with a solution saying they will charge 5 rupees for paying a bill, and they will collect all the bills of all the members on the colony together and go and pay it all at once, right? So innovation comes out of different places. Right? Innovation is not limited to technology-based innovations. Innovations come about in business processes, in new features, in new improvements in an existing workflow. Right? Why this entrepreneurial spirit is important is because as you graduate from college, right, many of you are going to pick up different careers, right? Some of you are going to pick up professional careers, right, where you go up and you go and take up a job in a particular company, right? And some of you could go for private sector companies. Some of you would want to prepare for UPSC exams, public sector careers. Some of you may go for higher education and come back to into an academic career where you are teaching, right? Entrepreneurship offers an alternative pathway, right? entrepreneurship is also a career choice that is becoming very, very feasible now under the current set of developments, right? It's although you don't really get a salary out of entrepreneurship, the growth path for an entrepreneur is very, very different, right? In a professional or in a public sector career, the amount of time that you spend in an organization to grow, to understand the deeper workings of a particular organizations, right? So by the time you have, any control over the direction of the company, you may have to work in that company for 20 years, right? Until then, you're working in the company, but you don't really have that say in that this is the decision making within the company itself. But as an entrepreneur, you are in a deciding seat from day one, right? So if you take up a career in entrepreneurship, the worst case situation is that you have earned yourself a very expensive MBA degree, right? Because from day one, you have to start making decisions, right? Whether you want to invest in developing a particular feature or not, whether you want to hire somebody to accelerate your development or not, right? Whether you want to work out of your home or you want to rent a place to work in, right? All of these are decisions, right? And you very early on, you start this process of decision making because there are just so many decisions to be made, right? So with entrepreneurship, the reason it is an attractive career choice is because some things have fundamentally changed today, right? Unlike maybe 20 years, 30 years ago, when setting up a company meant a significant upfront investment, right? Today, things have changed significantly, right? Today, you don't really need to go out. I mean, all of you use mobile phones. All of you have used multiple apps in your mobile phones, right? The mobile phone is an example of being able to reach your customer, right? Your paying customer directly on their phones itself without the need for an intermediary, right? Today, if you wanted to open up a shop, you don't really need to open up a physical shop, right? You can have a virtual, you can have an e-commerce storefront, right? So there are ways of accelerating your entrepreneurial journey, right? There are ways of putting up a website really, really quickly. There are ways of reaching your customers really, really quickly, right? And there is also support from government as well as non-government entities that help you in that career path. Now, with entrepreneurship, with all the professional careers, there is an age limit, right? There is a age of retirement, right? With entrepreneurship, that is no longer there. Once you are an entrepreneur, you are an entrepreneur for life, right? You will carry that spirit with you, even if you were to shut down that, your first company and go and work in another company. That entrepreneurial spirit never really goes away. You start looking at how to make your company more productive, right? Even if you were employed in a public sector or a private sector or even in academia, you start thinking about how to make things better, how to build better value for the stakeholders, right? So entrepreneurship, once it starts, right, it never really ends, which is why it is a career choice, right? You build a company, when you are working in a company, you are working there for salary, right? With entrepreneurship, you are working towards creating wealth, right? What does it mean to create wealth? Because it might take you 5 years, 10 years, 15 years, 20 years of effort to put together a particular company. But once that company has been set up, right, the revenue that it realizes, it continues, right? It continues to give back, right? That's the advantage of an entrepreneurial career choice. Right? So with entrepreneurship, the first thing I mentioned is that it is a behavioral aspect to connect capital with labor. Right? Now, when you are connecting capital with labor, the next thing that is, the biggest problem there, right, is really your business model, right? What does your business consist of? How are you going to have that process of connecting your innovation to the market, right? How are you going to deliver your innovation in a packaged form to the end consumers who might be using them, right? So the business model comes as part of a process of connecting innovation to the market, right? As the business model grows, right, you will find that there are multiple processes of different complexity that starts to creep into the business, and that starts to come into the business, right? How does this happen? Well, when you start a company, as a founder of a company, you are responsible for various aspects of the company, right? All the way from executing the mission vision statements to executing the operations, right? Deciding on what your product should look like, how it should be packaged, how it should reach the market, building the brand for that particular product. And to a large extent, what is happening is that as a founder, you are trying to do everything yourself, right? You are trying to essentially do a lot of heavy lifting yourself, right? Until your team starts to specialize, right? And then you have more and more people coming into the organization, each of whom have separate capabilities, have different actions that they can do, right? You have specialized resources who do specialized activities. And then what happens is, instead of you trying to lift this whole load, you have specialized people who have specific tools that they can use, right? And in the process, what happens is a business process starts to get defined. What is a business process? A business process is where you have a start and end, and you have a sequence of steps, right? For every role that comes into your system, right? You add value by maybe filling out a form, maybe collecting information, right? You have an input and an output, and a particular role, the way they are adding value is because they are doing a small step of the activity. So you have to understand that when a business grows, right, the more well-defined your processes are, the better it can scale, right? If you do not have well-defined processes, then every time a new question comes to the business, every time the business is going to go into a huddle and try to solve things on an ad hoc basis. That is never good, right? So a business process is nothing but a sequence of activities designed to create something of value, right? So when we talk about entrepreneurship, when we talk about creating a business is a legal entity that has certain rights and benefits under the law, right? As an entrepreneur, the biggest job really is to create this business. So not only the physical form of the business, not only the compliances part of it, but it also takes into account what are the processes that would need to be defined for that business. What is the business process and what is the business model that has to be developed, right? The business model is really, we have, with some of you who have done this exercise before in terms of creating a business model canvas, right? Where we looked at who are the major stakeholders in a particular business, right? Because at the end of the day, when you are going to investor, right, when you are asking for money for your business, the investor, the first thing that they are going to look at is this business model canvas, right? And what exactly are they looking at in this business model canvas? They are looking if your plan is such that your cost structure is less than your revenue stream. Now, it might so happen that today the business is not doing well, right? But are you on the right track? That is what they're trying to figure out. So when you look at the business model, at the center of the business model is your value proposition. What is it that you are planning to offer to your customer? How can they do what they were doing better? How can they do something that they were doing faster? Or how do they get better quality for their money? Right? In the process, your money comes from your customers. So you have got to know who your customers are. What are the customer segments that you want to go after? Which demographics you want to go after? Right? And how are you, how strong are your relationships with them? What channels are you going to use to get to them? And this essentially dictates how you're going to make money from your product, right? Now, that is very, very important, because the purpose of a business is to make money, right? Is to make profits for its stakeholders, right? So on one side is the customer and how you're going to make money. But at this stage, and in the early stage of a business, you do not really know your customers. You have not made any money, right? So how will you know how much money can you make, right? So that's one part. But at the other side of this business model canvas is what you think as in terms of your key partners, right? Your key activities, your key resources. And these are things that are going to cost you money, right? So you are looking, when you go to an investor to ask for money, right? You are essentially saying that give me money so that I can do some of these activities, right? And that forms your cost structure. What are the aspects? What are those elements that's going to cost you money, right? So we'll take a deeper look into those things shortly, right? But from a business standpoint, right, you're demonstrating that your idea has potential, right, means that you have to create something called a minimum viable product, right? The expectation of the minimum viable product is to demonstrate the key value propositions that your business will offer, right? So your MVP really is about demonstrating going to sell to your customer, right? But it should demonstrate that you can solve your customer's pain point, right? Often the MVP may look like this, right? It may be rigged up in a very, very crude form, right? You may not have all the pieces necessary. It may not have the best, product design, or it may not have the best. It may not have the best infrastructure around it. It may not have all the literature around it, right? So there are many things that could be incomplete. But what is important is that the minimum viable product should capture the customer pain point, right? Which means that you must go out of your house, you must go out and talk to people who are your potential customers. You must go and ask them, are they happy with the way things are, and what would they change? What would they want to be changed if they wanted something new? So you must be able to capture the customer pain point, right? What else should the MVP do? The MVP should demonstrate value, right? Why should the customer pay for your product, for your offering? And that is where you're demonstrating value. Also, the MVP helps you understand what things should you prioritize first. What are the features that you would want to have? What are the features that you must have, right? Every feature is going to cost you money to develop, right? Whether it is a new screen that has to be developed, whether it is a feedback loop that you want, right? Each and every one of those features will cost money, right? So that is why we can never create the ideal product on day one. You will produce maybe a 20% product, maybe a 30% product, but building an MVP means that you have your roadmap planned out. You can tell your investors that this is what is there today. I will act add ABC features in the next version in 3 months time. I will add DEF features in version 2 in 6 months time, right? And finally, the MVP reduces your idea to practice. Right? Now, remember, there is so much technology that is available all around us that any random mix of technology may sound very fancy. But when you actually try to use that technology and build a product, right, you find that the technology may not, you may be able to solve the problem in different ways, right? But when you solve the problem, you get a real sense of how much of the technology is actually needed, right? So it reduces that idea to practice. Any questions so far? Right. So I'll move on. Because every MVP needs a few resources. How are you going to build an MVP, right? You have an idea, you want to build something, but how will you go about? Where do you start? Well, the first thing that you need is, to move away from that idea itself. Not to move away from that idea, but to really solidify that, what you are thinking about makes sense. How will you do that? Well, you go and talk to subject matter experts, right? Subject matter experts, where will you find them? You will find them in college. You will find them in various talks, right? You will find them in different kinds of forums that are created by the state government, by the central government, right? So subject matter experts, we find them on LinkedIn, right? There's nothing stopping you to go and approach any one of them and ask them for an opinion, right? Where do you need the subject matter experts? You need them for competitive analysis, right? You have an idea and you want to build a particular product. What are the other kinds of products that that are there in the market? Even if there is no particular product that is competing with you, there could be other products that are competing for the same resources, right? For example, Netflix, right? Netflix, it's a streaming service. It offers you a lot of movies. Who is Netflix competitor? Well, Netflix's competitor is personal time. Netflix's competitor are your friends. Because directly competing with your offerings, there could be others. There could be other types of products that compete with your with the kind of offering that you have, right? With the same resources that you are vying for. That is one. The second thing is competitive. Your subject matter experts give you customer insights, right? It tells you whether what you are thinking about your customer, the way you are thinking that your customer will do something, the way that you think that they will spend money and use your service, right? Is it really valid? And for that, you need to be able to talk with people who have been seeing such customers every day for a very long time, right? You need to talk with market experts, right? You will need to talk with technology experts, right? Your way of implementing something, right? Do I really need to implement a database in every product? What kind of database do I need? How much will I scale in the first year, right? So you may be able to, a technology expert might be able to guide you along those questions. A lot of your faculty members are technology experts themselves. They have deep knowledge about particular areas. So use that. As part of the IIC, you already have access to the knowledge base that these senior faculty members are bringing to the table, right? What else? Compliance is another area, right, where you need to talk to probably chartered accountants, people who are experts in taxation, right, to understand that what is the tax implication of the idea that you are bringing in, right? would you be able to build that product in a different tax category? What are the taxes you are expected to pay, right? So a taxation expert will be able to tell you a lot about these compliance issues. They would be able to tell you, give you information about what type of company to register, how to go and file for intellectual property, right? People who are in business themselves, they will be able to validate your business model and tell you whether there are major risks associated with the way you are thinking about doing the business, right? The way you are planning to get money from your customer. Are there fundamental problems with that approach, right? So get out of your house, talk to subject matter experts, right? At this point, you don't really have a company, so it's just about gathering information from people who you think are going to be helpful for you, right? Again, advertisers, they can help you price your product, right? What would be the right pricing that a customer is willing to pay for it, right? Is it going to be 1 rupee? Is it going to be 100 rupees? Is it going to be 1,000 rupees, right? How that money really depends on how much benefit you are giving your end customer, right? Finally, how should you approach the market, right? How should you brand your product so that you get to the market, people recognize your brands, right? So the key lesson from this is that subject matters, they save you a lot of time, right? So if you are finding a particular subject matter in your area, or somebody who works in your area, then you may be able to make them interested in your company. You can ask them to become directors or part of your advisory board, right? Get them invested in your idea so that they will share more and more knowledge with you, right? So the first thing that is needed is what we call is the people stack. Who are your advisors to your company, right? Sometimes you can get them for free. Sometimes this advice is available for free. In some cases, you may have to go and seek counsel. You may have to pay for their time in order to talk with them, right? So definitely the first kind of resource you need are your subject matter experts. The second kind of experts, the second kind of thing is need is a valid customer segment, because if you are planning to make a particular product, then you are making that product for someone, right? So that category of people must exist, right? If it is a very, very few people who need your product, is a very, then it becomes a very niche product, and it's difficult to understand the requirements, right? So when you are looking at this segment, you essentially look at what are the customer demographics, what are the customer psychometrics, what are the pain points that the customers have, right? What are their media habits, what are the competitor usage patterns, right? What are the customer budgets? So basically what I'm trying to say over here is that you have to know who you are building for before you start building your product, because your MVP, if you do not know your customer, right, and you end up making a very, very expensive feature that your customer is not able to afford, then all that effort that went into building that feature or proving a particular aspect in your MVP is just going to waste. Right?
Sir, can I know about, because when I doing over the Innovation Ambassador certification, I can able to know some kind of terms like TRL, which what we called as in technology readiness level.
Yes.
Any relationship with it, sir?
Not with this. TRL is again, it's a separate hierarchy that has been introduced, because if I look at some of the IITs, for example, right, they have They have been setting up a lot of centers of excellences, right? Which means that if I have a particular company that needs very, very specialized equipment, right, then I can use this technology readiness levels. So this is more on the customer side, that even when I'm thinking about building a new algorithm, right, building a new ML algorithm, it might, the data for that algorithm might be expensive. I might end up spending a few lakhs just collecting and annotating that data. But if nobody is going to use that, or if I do not have a valid customer segment who's going to use that particular model, then is that the right model to build it first up? So going this route helps you understand who are you building for. Does that make sense?
Fine, sir. Fine, sir.
Right. The third resource that you need is your workspace and IT. As an early stage company, right, you may start to work out of your home, but that is where the IICs kind of step in. The IICs kind of give you that preliminary space where you can start, where you are, where you can sit and work and bring things together. You don't have to worry about things like rent or power, right? Basic IT infrastructure. But over time, as your company grows and as you need more and more things, you need to have you will get additional requirements, right? You will have to start investing in the security and redundancy of your workspace, of all the components that you are building in, right? All the access costs to your area, right? All the specializations that you need, specific skill sets that you need, right? So fundamentally, you need to know where your team will come together, where will they come and work. And this is again reason you ask for money, right? Reason you ask for money is because that money is a proxy for helping you to come and gather these resources together, right? So when you are asking for money, you have to take into account where will you spend the money, because the investor will definitely ask you that question. Jyotish sir.
Yes, sir.
I may have to cancel the talk a little bit. I'm not feeling well.
Okay, fine, sir. Fine, sir.
Shall we take this up at some other point then?
Fine, sir. Fine, sir.
I'm just feeling a little short of breath. I'll come back to this topic. Maybe we can reschedule this tomorrow or day after.
Okay, sir. Based on the time frame, we can able to do it, sir. Not a problem.
Right. Otherwise, I'm just going to cover this a little bit more shorter period, because there were a number of things that I wanted to talk about, but I'm going to reduce that a little bit, right? The other things that you have to take into account is your supply chain, where your products are going to come from, right? What is the lead time that you need? Where, if you have one supplier, right, how do you create redundancy among them, right? Know what are the risks and liabilities that your suppliers are taking on. How will you build your product, right? Then comes your production vendors, right? Where will you get your product made from? Because as an early stage company, you will not be able to make or assemble the product yourself, right? So you may have to look at where you prototype the solution, where you might need equipment to you might need production equipment to build out the whole complete the assembly, right? Your product would need to be packaged. So you've got to know when and where your product will be built, and finally your distribution channels, whether it is going to go through general trade or through aggregation sites, through Amazon or any of the e-commerce sites, because all of them will involve different kinds of costs, right? And finally, how will your revenue reach your company? So when you look at the resources for building an MVP, you have to look at how do you get your subject matter experts, your customer base, your workspace and IT related costs, your supply chain, your production chain, and your distribution methods, right? And this brings me to the finals. This brings me to the final sector, which is where do you get this funding from, right? Because when you are looking at funding, there is a cost associated to the capital, and this cost is really depends on the amount of risk that you are asking from the from that particular fund, right? If you are, for example, expanding onto a family business, the risk really is about scalability. So the risks are low, and you might be able to get funds from a financial institution, right? Whereas if you're an MSME business expanding on a well-known business model, there are issues about scalability, but supply chain and quality control are the major issues, right? And as you see in a startup with a completely new business model, there are multiple risk factors because of which the risk kind of adds up, and there is a very, very high risk to somebody investing their money in it, right? So the cost of capital is directly proportional to the risk in the particular venture. Therefore, your angel investors are usually investors who can take on that risk, right? They are individuals who can take on that particular risk. Your funding sources comes from, at a concept stage, you will have funds from, there are some funds that are available from bootstrapping organizations, from seed funds, which might be available from the IIC, various hackathon challenges, Startup India challenges that keep on getting published, right? Your angel investors really help with your early stage, taking things from that early stage to that growth stage, right? This is where you find a lot of well-established individuals who are willing to take you to that stage, right? Angel investors, they kind of, okay, I'm not able to talk very much. I'm going to close the session out today. Maybe we'll come back to this at a later point. Essentially, I'm just going to go through this couple of slides. I don't think I can take on very many questions today, right? In terms of where the major funding comes from, in terms of venture capitals and angel investors, right? And once an organization does go to a more mature stage, to a formal, where you have these formal financial institutions that are available.
Thank you, sir. I think we can understand that the work schedule that you have been available, that we will make it on the forthcoming session, that we can able to make some kind of progressive, we can make it added, and we can additionally do it in the forthcoming session with Q4, which is available in Institution Innovation Council. Additional with that, as we discuss about in what way the curriculum aspects that matches with the students to enrich their knowledge in aspects like some kind of certification courses. And today's session, I think the students get an idea about what is business model canvas. That is one of the crucial point of an entrepreneurship, and in what way the angel investment as well as that customer acquisition cost, this kind of technical terms like customer relationship. So even the student is going to be an entrepreneur, they want to know this kind of basic terms to identify about what kind of setup they can go for platform while they have been developing their own kind of corporates, especially in this technology aspects. So I think today's session will give over the students as well as the faculty to know about how the entrepreneurship is important, and in what way the structuring of an entrepreneurs that we can able to take in with the name of an angel investors, that you given some kind of angel investors, how they have been progressively taken over the opportunities and make a successful entrepreneur. Thank you, Professor, on behalf of Department of Computer Science Engineering of Arunai Engineering College and Institution Innovation Council of AAEC, to make this progressive on this today's session. And thank you, sir.
Thank you. Please feel free to drop in a note if you wanted to reach out to me on WhatsApp or something, right? Please feel free to put in a question. Unfortunately, I cannot take questions any further today, right? Priyadarshini, just go ahead and shoot that question over WhatsApp. Okay.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
All right. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, sir.